find ourselves winding the clock back to the 1940s during the war years of the railroad. The Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway found itself in a bit of a pickle. You see, due to wartime restrictions and due to the uptick in service caused by war, the NC&STL was left wanting. At that time, the 1,203-mile road's newest, most successful, and heaviest, except for 3 old Mallet pushers, was a dozen J1 mountain types built to a modified light USRA 482 designed by Alco. However, the NC&STL wasn't completely unfamiliar with the 484 design, as only days before the stock market crash in October 1929, the railway placed an order with Alco for 5 J2 484s, numbers 565 to 569. At that time, the wheel arrangement had not really had a name for itself, which we now know as Northern, and so the NC&STL, being a deep southern railroad, decided on the name Dixie. Their bigger brother, the L&N, had already dabbled in diesel locomotives before restrictions were put on the railroad and found them to be quite cost efficient and less maintenance intensive. While the NC&STL wanted to purchase diesels, they were stopped by the government.
I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
And so they went shopping. It just so happened that Alco was finishing up their improved 484 J3 design, spurred on by the Norfolk and Western's incredible J's, as well as the emergence of World War II. Designed by a Mr. C.M. Darden, were first floated by the L&N, who I presume, after spending a small fortune, and even that's an understatement, on the Big Emmas, and seeing how the Big Emma was performing in the coal fields of Kentucky, declined the purchase of the 484s. The design was next floated by the NC&STL officials, who, under the circumstances they were in, reluctantly ordered 10 of the engines. Being delivered between July and August of 1942, they were immediately put into service. The J3s that were bought weren't the first design, however, as Alco offered a more streamlined version closer to the NWJ series. However, L&N President Hall mentioned that a $6,000 addition for the streamlining, which would be $123,000 in today's money, was absolutely uncalled for and advised the NC&STL to go with a semi-streamlined look. And so it was. The J3 bore a smoke box diameter bullet nose as the cap on a pipe-free, completely jacketed smoke box and boiler. A broad yellow skirt extended up the steps from the pilot beam and along the running board to the cab, giving them the nickname Yellow Jackets or Stripes by crews.
How fast will those Yellow Jackets roll?
An engineer asked Mr. Darden not long after they were delivered. Well, now, you're the engineer, Darden countered. How fast will they go?
I've held them open as long as I had the nerve, but they just keep going up,
was the reply. As it soon turned out, the Dixies were more than perfect for what the NC originally hoped. In the words of W.A. Gaines, only engine I ever rode that was so quiet you could hear the wheels click of the trailing truck from the cab. He recalls how well they steamed, that they could be hand crossfired into town in the unlikely event that their dependable stoker would quit. Within 2 months of their delivery, the NC was found wanting even more engines due to the war, and first floated the idea of buying brand new EMD E6s. However, the War Production Board was just not having it and refused to let them buy new ones. And so, they settled with 10 more J3 Dixies. The 10 J3s, which Alco delivered in 1943, were numbered 580 to 589, and were duplicates of the first order of J3s except for their cast iron bells, and they came without skirting, giving these specific J3s the names Stripes. The J3s would go on to earn legendary status among railroaders and rail fans of the time. These big Dixies, with their striking yellow stripes, bellowing long bell Hancock 3-chime whistles, and 70-inch drivers, handled every task the NC gave them. As the war ended in 1945, the NC slowly went back down to normal traffic levels, and the end of steam on the NC was within sight and rapidly approaching. In 1947, the NC ordered F3 units from EMD, and thus began the retirement of steam on the NC, including the glamorous J3s. Now, the J3s weren't retired due to being bad engines, yet it was due to a new breed of iron horse. The Dixies gave way to the diesels, and upon its legacy, CSX now roams the rails. In the early 50s, the L&N went the route of the NNW, since majority of its traffic was coal coming out of the coal fields of eastern Kentucky. When the L&N finally absorbed the NC&STL, Roy Anderson and several others from the L&N South Louisville shops went to the West Nashville back shops and inspected the fleet of J3s. The plan was to possibly reactivate and get the fleet of J3s in service on the L&N's more flatter routes, such as New Orleans or the mainline route, and to have the Big Emmas continue service on the EK, CV, and CC lines. Mr. Roy said,
"They were in pretty good shape, but they would need new flues and some money put in to have them put on the road."
Now, if followed through, the L&N would have had 484s. Unfortunately, however, that just wasn't meant to be. New management came and the plans were quickly scrapped, as well as holding on to steam itself, and the L&N began to rapidly dieselize in the mid-50s. All of the J3s would be sold and sent to scrap lines, except one, that being Nashville's very own 576. 576 would be donated and displayed in Centennial Park, where she sat for over 70 years. During her time on display, 576 appeared on the Life magazine front cover with famed American singer and songwriter Johnny Cash. There were previous attempts from the Clinchfield, L&N, Southern, and even Norfolk Southern in the 80s to have her restored, but all plans fell through. 576's story doesn't end there, however. In the mid-2010s, Nashville Steam Preservation Society was formed, and work quickly began on assessing the locomotive's condition. After it was found that the engine was in good mechanical condition, the road to revival began as she was towed, lifted onto a truck, and put onto CSX rails for the first time in decades. And on March 9, 2019, CSX moved her in front of Nashville Union Station for display, with CSX CW44AC 576, the NC&STL sticker unit, positioned at her 12 o'clock for photos. Eventually, with CSX and RJ Corman, the 576 made its way into its new home at the Tennessee Central Railroad Museum in Nashville. Over the last 7 years, the volunteers at NSPS have been hard at work getting the 576 into running shape. Now, as I make this video on July 16th, 2026, the Big Dixie had a fire in her lungs and passed her first steam test with flying colors. Her 3 chimes sang out in victory as she breathed at last. For the remainder of 2026, steam tests will continue to be held, and eventually, her first test run sometime in 2027. She now marks the 3rd Streamline 484 with us in the preservation era, joining the ranks of 4449 and the 611. Now that steam has returned to Nashville at the hands of the hard-working men and women at Nashville Steam, the thunder of the Dixies will echo in the hearts and minds for decades to come. Long live the Iron Horse. Now, if you like what you see, please consider donating to the Nashville Steam Preservation Society and help spread the word about the road to revival.